Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Jennie Dildine, the LDS Mission Coach, and you are listening to the LDS Mission Podcast, episode number 139, Thoughts Are Not Problems. I'm Jennie, the LDS Mission Coach, and whether you are preparing to serve a mission, currently serving, a returned missionary, or a missionary mama like me, I created this podcast just for you. Are you searching for epic confidence, ready to love yourself and to learn the how of doing hard things? Then let's go. I will help you step powerfully into your potential and never question your purpose again. It's time to embrace yourself, embrace your mission, embrace your life, and embrace what's next. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to the podcast. I am happy to be here with you today and sharing with you some stuff that I've been thinking about the last couple of days. Sometimes I have like a whole podcast planned for a certain day, and then all of a sudden what happens is I start getting a lot of messages and emails and like Instagram direct messages about a certain topic. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should just do a quick podcast episode about that. And that is the case today. And so we're going to talk all about how thoughts are not problems. But first, the other thing I wanted to make sure that you guys know and that I'm really clear about with what I offer and what my coaches and I offer for anybody who wants to work with us. Okay. So we have a program called Mission Prep Plus. It's my new signature program for preparing missionaries, and picture it much like the online MTC, but all for your mindset stuff and your emotional well-being. We dive into all of that so that by the time you hit the mission, you are mentally and emotionally prepared. Like your worth won't go down the tubes. You'll know what to do with your difficult companion. You'll know all of those things, what to do for that. Okay. Also, the other thing that's super cool about that is it comes with like email access to us for questions, like a private email for questions throughout the rest of your entire mission. And sometimes I remember feeling like when my kids were on their missions is that they seemed a little bit isolated to me. And I loved this idea of being able to provide a way for you or for your kids, whoever's listening to this podcast, to be able to have contact with someone who can give them tips and tools and strategies about how to sort of manage and maneuver the mission. Okay, when it comes to a mental and emotional place. Now, there's a lot of people that will offer you a lot of advice about how to teach, about how to like tips for, meeting your goals and all kinds of things like that. And all of those are beautiful and fine and good, but none of them are as effective as if you have this foundation of self-confidence, of what to do with failure, of how to think about yourself, about how to think about your mission and all of that kind of thing. So we do all of that in Mission Prep Plus. It's crazy, amazing, like place to be. My coaches are in there. I'm in there teaching a master class, plus that ongoing support throughout the rest of your mission as long as you need it. It's just epic. Okay. If you then maybe you find this podcast or you find me and what I do really soon before you go on your mission and you just want something that you can take with you, then I would recommend we have a course that you can buy and download all the videos. And the awesome thing about the course is you can get all of the information sort of in like a quick, like watch those videos. I think there's 10 of them as quickly as you want to. Okay. So we have that for missionaries. We have coaching for returned missionaries. I've worked with missionaries who have been home anywhere from a week. I shouldn't say that. About a month is usually the best time to start working with a returned missionary. anywhere from about a month after they've been home to 4 to 5 years after they've been home. Okay. So we do one-on-one coaching with returned missionaries. It can be a very challenging transition to take like this. I just had a strategy call yesterday with a sister who's been home about a month, and like the self-confidence that's sort of plummeting, and the self-worth that's sort of plummeting, and this loss of fulfillment and loss of purpose. Okay. So we do all of that help with returned missionaries as well. Okay. The other thing that we do is we help missionary moms. I don't talk about this very much, but at any given time, we have a whole handful of clients that are missionary moms that want help, that are trying to help their missionary kind of maneuver that, but they want the help for themselves as well. I was actually just talking to a missionary mom this week who was just feeling like she's on this emotional roller coaster with her kids. And I'm telling you, I understand. I have been there. I have been on the emotional roller coaster with your missionary and your kids. And we have all of the help and one-on-one coaching for that kind of thing too. So those are kind of the main things that we do here. Of course, we have lots of free resources and stuff too. Getting the podcast to your missionary on a Google Drive, which I love that we do that so that missionaries all over the world can listen. If you're interested in that, just email me at podcast@jenniedildine.com. So we're doing lots of really cool stuff here. Really, really important stuff. I've been thinking about how I've seen a couple accounts on Instagram, and amazing, cool stuff that people are doing. And one of the posts I saw was like, this is what you need to pack for a mission. And I'm like, oh, that's so important. It is important to know what to pack for a mission. But what's even more important, you guys, after doing this like 4.5, almost 5 years, is knowing how to manage yourself, keep your confidence and worth intact, know how to manage your mind, feel your feelings, deal with difficult companions, overcome failure, find joy in the work even when things aren't going your way. Those are the most important things. Like in my mind, doesn't actually matter what you pack. I mean, it does. Okay. So if you're going to the Great White North, like one of my daughters-in-law did, it matters. Like probably what shoes you wear, and it probably matters what kind of coat you have and things like that, right? Up in Canada where it's freezing, or in Alaska or whatever, or if it's dark. I just talked to a client where it's like dark most of the day in Finland, and they're going to want a happy light, right? Or something like that. Those are important. Please don't misunderstand me. But what is so important is just having the inner tools, the inner ability to manage all of it, to manage your mind and manage your heart and feel the way you want to feel and create the experiences you want to create. Okay. So I want to just make sure I was super clear about the things we offer here, because it's so much good. And if you know someone that is going on a mission, or if you have, maybe you're a mom listening to this and you have a friend whose son or daughter is going on a mission, or who just got home and who's really struggling, just have them, like, maybe just send them this information, send them this podcast, send them an email. You know, I send out a weekly email as well to missionaries all over the world, and returned missionaries and missionary moms. So just, if you can, just help us spread the word. I just have been thinking so much about how there's so many missionaries, right? And these mental and emotional tools are more important than ever. It's no secret that you're probably seeing a lot more missionaries come home earlier than they were planning, right? You see it probably in your wards and in your stakes. And I really feel like if many of them could just have these tools before they leave, what a difference it could make. And if these returned missionaries had these tools, you know, around the time that they got home, they wouldn't have to suffer for as long as they do. I actually worked with a gentleman who was on his high council actually, and was struggling with some like anxiety and stuff like that. And, you know, he had thoughts still about his mission, you know, that were kind of affecting him all these years later. And so I just feel, if you can't tell, super passionate about helping and helping these kids figure out how to help themselves. That's the most important thing, is letting them figure out how to help themselves so that when they're out there, they know what to do. When they come home, they'll know how to show up and they'll know how to be there for themselves. Okay, so off of my soapbox, let's talk about thoughts are not problems. So this particular topic did come up because I had been messaging with a mom who was kind of telling me a little bit about her daughter who's getting ready to submit her mission papers. And we were talking a little bit about thoughts. And she's like, I follow some of the work that you do, and I follow some of the work that some other coaches do. And she said something like, sometimes I get the impression that we are focusing too much on thoughts. She said something like, it's almost like we're hyper-focused on thoughts and we're overthinking things so much that we make it a bigger problem. And I was like, oh my goodness. Yes, I feel like that's true. Sometimes we hyper-focus on our thoughts and we make them a problem. But what I told her and what I'm telling you right now is thoughts are not problems. Okay, and I'm going to share some verbiage with you that you might think in your mind about thoughts, and we're going to kind of talk through those, and then we're going to talk about some other ways that you can think about the thoughts that your brain offers you. Here's what I want to preface all of this with is, of course, thoughts matter. Okay. If you've been listening to me for a while, you know that thoughts matter because thoughts create your feelings, which drive your actions like fuel in a car, and then give you your results. And without exception, your result that you get is always going to be directly tied back to the thought that you're thinking. Now, our brain tells us our results and the experiences that we have come from where we are or what we're doing or who we're with. But when we dive a little deeper, we start to understand that the thought actually creates the result. So it makes sense, especially if we're involved in this work of kind of becoming aware of what we're thinking and trying to manage our emotions, that we would get a little hyper focused on those thoughts. So, but they matter, but they're not problems. Let me give you another example. I was talking to a returned missionary on a strategy call. Actually, was it a return missionary? No, I think it was a preparing missionary. And she said to me, I've been listening to your stuff for a little while. I get it. And it makes sense that our thoughts create our feelings. But then she said, I just get stuck with my thinking. She said, I don't know what to do after that. I think all these thoughts, I spiral in these thoughts. I tend to overthink things, and then I don't know what to do next. And I said, okay, yeah, that's what we do. That's what our brain does. And she said, but I know these thoughts are not productive. Do you see the judgment in that? Do you see how she is thinking, that the thought she's thinking and the ones that she's been observing are negative, that they're a bad thing? Here are some other things that you might be thinking that I've certainly thought, and actually these are taken from some messaging and some intake forms that I've had recently for strategy calls and for Mission Prep Plus and stuff. So maybe you have a thought that's I don't have what it takes to serve a mission. I'm concerned I'm going to feel a lot of homesickness and struggle with companions. I might miss my boyfriend. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how I will find me time in the mission schedule. I might get sent home, right? Many of you are worried about getting sent home. We might have a thought I don't know how well I'm going to adjust. I'm worried I won't be able to finish the mission, that I'm not going to be capable, right? So notice, at first glance, we might have a tendency to judge the thoughts and be like, well, that's not useful. That's not productive. Maybe I'm overthinking this. But what is far more powerful than judging the thoughts and thinking that they're a problem is just noticing them. Just be like, that's so interesting that my brain is worried about that. Okay, so here are a couple things that you might think about thoughts. And I've already said, sometimes people will be like, the thought is the problem. Okay, but thoughts are not problems. You might have something that's like, this thought is not serving me. I have many negative spinning thoughts, and sometimes people will say, I spiral downward in negative thinking. Like this woman had said in our messaging, she said, I think we tend to overthink things. Even that word overthink has sort of like a negative vibe to it, like as if it's possible for us to quote unquote think too much. And then there is sort of this, especially in this the coaching world, I don't know if you've heard this before, but sometimes you'll hear people say all problems are thought problems. And what I want to say to that is, what if none of it is a problem? What if thoughts aren't a problem? What if feelings aren't a problem? What if the way you're showing up is not a problem? What if the results you have aren't even a problem? They're just the way that we're operating on, default as humans, and it makes total sense. I even had this, the scripture kind of come to my mind from Proverbs where it says, as a man thinketh, so is he. And then this kind of also makes everything sort of problematic, right? Like, so if we have this thought about our companion where we're like, I just don't like the way she taught that lesson, or I don't like how she leaves dishes in the sink or whatever, then if we have this idea that, that means I'm a bad person or a bad missionary, or I'm not Christ-like in some way, now we've made just the thought that our brain has had, we've made it a problem. Okay, so now we have a problem on top of a problem, if we even want to call the thought a problem. But instead, we don't need to make the thought a problem. Okay, because here's what's true. As a man thinketh, so is he, and so is he not. We have so many thoughts every single day. And we don't need to change them. We don't need to switch them out. We don't need to judge them. We don't need to think they're a problem. It's not useful to think of our thoughts as a problem. What I want us to do instead is, if we can, just be the compassionate watcher of your brain. And in a couple weeks, I'm going to talk all about this concept called the toddler brain. And we're going to talk about some ways that we can sort of manage that brain and how we tend to talk to our brain, but maybe a better way to do that instead. But for now, let's just focus on how can we be more compassionate towards this lower brain that genuinely, you guys, I want you to hear me out when I say this, is that it really has your best interest in mind. I know that's so mind-blowing, because if you're about to go into a new lesson, like if you're a missionary and you're going to teach your first lesson and you're full of anxiety and nervousness because you're thinking I might not do a good job, you're like, wait, no, my brain is not trying to help me. My brain is trying to thwart me and shut me down. Well, what you need to know is, remember, your brain is a problem-solving machine. I picture it like a literal computer. And it's scanning the environment, scanning the fact that you're about to go into this lesson, that you've only been in the mission for 4 weeks or whatever it is. And it's taking in all of that information. And then it has 3 objectives. It is always 100% of the time trying to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and conserve energy. And so when your brain spits out a sentence that's like, we might not do a good job. I might get the language wrong. That is not a problem, or at least it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a problem that your brain, that's what it's going to. Okay, instead, we can just be like, oh, there's where my brain's going. Kind of makes sense. And it's okay that it does that. It's okay that your brain wants to shut you down. Now, does that mean that you're going to let it shut you down? Sometimes you will and sometimes you won't. Both are totally fine. But the key is having awareness and understanding your brain is really just trying to help you. Now, remember this avoid pain piece. This is huge. The avoid pain piece that your brain is trying to accomplish at all times, your brain can't sort of tell the difference between potential physical pain and potential emotional pain. So any sort of pain that you're going to experience or potentially experience by going in and teaching a lesson for the first time on the mission, it's going to freak out a little bit. It's going to start offering you all of the thoughts. It's going to do what it can to try to shut you down, to avoid that pain, and to conserve any sort of like emotional expenditure that we might be putting out by putting ourselves in that situation. Okay. So thoughts are not good or bad. They are not right or wrong. They certainly are not problems. They just are. Okay. That brain of yours is just, when we think about it like a computer, it's literally spitting out a piece of code. Okay. It's like we want to, like if you were, I'm not into coding. I don't even know how it works. I don't even pretend to know how coding works. But many times I think the code is designed to make something happen in the computer, right? Or to have some kind of web page pop up or some kind of text pop up or whatever in a certain color and font and box or whatever, and with a picture. Okay. And so that's what your brain's doing. It's like, how are we going to solve this problem? We're going to spit out a piece of code, and that's it. So we can either think that this piece of code is a problem, or we can notice the code, notice the sentence, like understand it with compassion, be like, oh, I see what my brain's trying to do here. And then we can leverage the power of the machine instead of thinking that the machine is a problem or that thought is a problem. You guys, our heavenly parents gave us these brains for a reason, okay? Not just to keep us alive, but because it provides sort of that balance or that opposition so that we could come here and experience all of the feelings that are here to experience to make life full and interesting and lush and have so much depth to it, okay? And so none of it is a problem. And we only create more problems when we think our thoughts are problems. So try to avoid judgment like, I just overthink things, or all problems are thought problems, or I have these spinning negative thoughts, or this thought is not serving me, or this thought is not productive. Just observe it. Don't attach any fear like, oh, if I'm thinking this, that must mean that I'm a bad person or I'm a bad missionary, right? It doesn't mean that. It's just what your brain is offering you. Okay, so if we're going to leverage the power of this machine, this amazing, like complicated, diverse, I mean, you guys, if we really think about it, the ability that our brain has to think about the future and contemplate the past and problem solve, it's actually quite mind-blowing. And I sort of believe we haven't even, well, there's studies, right, that say we haven't even tapped into the power of our brain fully yet. So let's, instead of making our thoughts, the coding that our brain spits out, problems, let's maybe decide, let's give a few other definitions to our thoughts, okay? Thoughts are Number one, an assessment our brain makes, right? It takes in information like a problem-solving machine, and it just makes an assessment. And sometimes that assessment is going to feel good when we think it, and sometimes it's not. Totally fine. I'll never forget one woman I heard talking about her thoughts, and she lived in New York City, and she was about to go out to get the mail, and maybe I've shared this before, but her brain came online, that lower brain, and was like, you might want to be careful. There could be bears out there. I mean, probably not bears in New York City, but your brain will do whatever it can. Again, just another illustration to avoid pain, the pain of like putting on her shoes and going out in the cold and all of that, whatever it can to avoid pain and conserve that energy. We can also think of our thoughts, number two, as a piece of code designed to reach a certain outcome. And one of those outcomes is always seek pleasure, avoid pain, or conserve energy. We can think of our thoughts just like a sentence in my mind. It's just literally some letters with spaces and a period at the end. We can also think of our thoughts as information. It's just good to notice and observe what your brain is paying attention to and what it's worried about. It doesn't actually mean that we have to worry about that thing, but it does give us a lot of information about what is going on inside for us. Okay, so remember too, your thoughts are not you. Your thoughts are your brain. I know that feels different, but just because you think a thought doesn't mean that that is just you. We think so many thoughts all of the time. Your brain, very convincing at times, and it's totally okay. Your brain, these thoughts are not a problem. Please just be the compassionate watcher. These thoughts are actually a gift. Your brain, this problem-solving machine, it's why we're alive. It's the gift we've been given to sort of manage our life here on this earth. And it's beautiful. And so don't judge it. Don't think of it as a problem. So instead of saying, I shouldn't think this, or I don't want to think this, or anything like this is a problem, consider telling yourself, it makes sense that I'm thinking this, and it's okay. Your brain has a good reason for everything it shares with you. Even if we go back to some of these thoughts, like, I don't have what it takes. I'm worried I'm going to be homesick. I might be distracted. I don't know how to adjust to missionary life. Even those thoughts, your brain has a good reason for offering that piece of code, that sentence in your mind, that information, that assessment to you. It has a good reason. So be very compassionate and become the compassionate watcher. Okay? So I hope this makes sense to you. I just wanted to get it out there. I never want the work that we're doing here with our mindset work and our emotional work to be used against yourself. And I think one of the first things that we do when we understand that thoughts create feelings is we think, oh, well, I'm just going to feel good all the time. And I'm going to think all the positive thoughts all the time so that I can create all of the amazing results that I want all of the time. And then inadvertently, when we think other thoughts, we think, oh, well, this is a problem. It's never a problem, the thoughts that you're thinking. Doesn't matter if they're thoughts about yourself. Doesn't matter if your thoughts about your companion. Doesn't matter. It's just information. It's just sentences. It's just code. And by the way, if your brain finds a piece of code or a sentence that works to shut you down, that works to cause you to avoid any of that pain or to not go into that lesson or any of that, if it finds a thought that works to shut you down, it'll go back to it. Again and again and again and again. Our brain's like, oh, that was awesome. That worked really well. Let's try that thought again. Let's try that piece of code again. But if we can be the compassionate watcher, if we can just be like, interesting. I wonder why my brain's doing that. Oh, I see. That makes sense, actually. And it's okay that I'm thinking that. Your brain will start to let go of some of those thoughts. It'll start to loosen its grip on what it's trying to offer you. Okay? So I hope you guys all have an amazing week. Observe your thoughts with compassion, all of them. And I hope this really helps you. Okay? We'll talk to you next time. Serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can present a unique set of challenges. And many of those challenges you might not even see coming. So you're going to want a unique set of solutions. It's easier than you think to overcome worry and anxiety, serve the successful mission you've always dreamed of, and navigate your post-mission experience with confidence. That is why I created some amazing free goodies that I'm sharing in my show notes. Maybe you'll want to grab the free training for preparing missionaries, my video course for RMs, or maybe you and I should hop on a free strategy call. If you're ready to take your preparedness to serve or your preparedness to come home to the next level, then go grab one of those freebies. And in the meantime, no matter which part of the mission experience you are involved in, just know that Jennie, the LDS Mission Coach, is thinking about you every single day.